Hello.
Hello. Good morning, sir.
Hi, hi. Good morning, everyone. How are you?
It's just fine. Well,
Okay, great.
yeah.
So, how are we doing this?
I'll give the general guidelines before we start. All right.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. All right, guys. So, since the our esteemed speaker has joined, I would like to give out the general guidelines again. Please try to keep your videos on during the session. We would really appreciate that. And however, keep yourself muted as well. But you can ask the questions to the speaker during the question and answer round. All right. Now, I am Harsh Davas, the member of the Amicus Curiae, and I welcome you all at the session of the Presidency Dialogue series on the behalf of Amicus Curiae. I would like to welcome our guest speaker of the day, Varun Jhaveri. All right, so before beginning the session, I would like to give a brief about the Amicus Curiae and also about our guest speaker. The Amicus Curiae is the brainchild of several legal luminaries and eminent personalities across the country and the globe. The Amicus Curiae is a dream online platform which aims at proliferating legal knowledge and providing an ingenious understanding of the cognizance of various fields of law to make sure that legal knowledge and experience penetrates to every nook and corner of the ever-growing legal fraternity. Through ambitious and studious legal brains across the country, the Amicus Curiae aims at providing valuable contribution to the contemporary legal issues, along with the development of the omnipresent field of law to the masses. We are also registered under the Indian Partnership Act of 1932 and the Ministry of MSME, Government of India, and are also an ISO 9001 2015 organization. The Amicus Curiae is presently the eighth largest legal website in India, and we are connected to more than 20,000 law students from across 80 plus law schools in India. Now, I would like to give a brief bio of our esteemed guest as well. Shri Varunji is an entrepreneur spearheading a fashion tech startup that is Hopnow. He also extends health tech and finance consultancy with specialization in foreign investment in India. He is also serving as the National In Charge Policy Research and Training of the Bharatiya Janata Yuva Morcha, that is the BJYM. He is responsible for formulating policies, conducting research, and providing training to the BJYM members across the country. He has also served as an OSD to the National Health Authority and played role in the implementation of the Ayushman Bharat Yojana. He has also worked with the Niti Aayog, Asian Development Bank, and UNESCO. Now, with the permission, sir, we would like to start the session. Thank you so much. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Harsh, for the kind introduction of the organization as well as my brief bio. Very happy to be here. I know it's a sort of a Sunday noon, but this is the only time that I can actually join in. So thank you for having me today. I have a bit of a sore throat, so please bear with that. So.
Yes.
Uh, the topic that is there today, of course, it focuses on healthcare, uh, and that too, a healthcare which is a bit more India-centric. So I was thinking what we can do is that, we'll of course focus on healthcare, but at the same time also take some of the other aspects and, different strands of development which are out here in the country, as well as, we'll try to connect it with the larger picture. So, before we really start this, I want to keep this entire session, entire interaction, a bit more interactive. So the idea would be that I can probably just give like a 10-minute sort of a summary on how healthcare is really organized. What before that, I want to understand from all of you, what are some of the interesting questions, or some of the curious areas where you have the curiosity to understand, whether it's with regard to healthcare or whether it's with regard to overall sort of a development picture of the country. So what are some of those particular things that all of you are interested to hear about? Because I want to ensure that even the 10-minute summary that I'm giving, it is aligned to what you want to you know learn about or talk about. And then after the 10 minutes we will just do a sort of a Q&A session, wherein whatever your questions are, I'm happy to answer. And it's going to be more like a discussion format rather than sort of a one-way lecture where I'm just talking and you're just here. So I don't want to do that. So let's start with the fact that what are some of the questions, or what are some of the areas that you want to learn about. And you can you know, mention any of that particular area in the larger ambit of the development space. I'm happy to speak on that. Yeah. Harsh, you can probably just moderate it and see who have the question. We can. probably
Yeah,
just
so
add in.
you guys can raise your hands first of all, and then I can pick you.
Yeah.
You guys can raise your hands or like, and then we can begin.
Generally, it is always, the first uh, speaker, which is always, sort of there's an inertia. After that, there is, no longer an inertia. If any one of you have a question, you can, probably speak about that. If you don't have a question, then, I can just give like a larger ambit of how healthcare is really organized in the country. Also, the students who have joined here, yeah, you have joined here. Do you want to hear things from a more of a legal perspective, or from, more of a policy perspective, or from a more of a business perspective? Because that's the intersection that I particularly work on. So I'm happy to answer that. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's someone who has, a
Yeah,
question. Yeah.
Anupriya has raised her hand. You can speak, Anupriya, now.
Good morning, sir, and good morning, all the members. Thank you so much for joining the session. So, sir, we would want to look from all the aspects possible to have a more clearer and practical approach. My question is, what is the role of World Health Organization or similar organizations when it comes to such collaborations, global collaborations?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. Thank you. Okay. Is there any other question?
Yes, sir. So, and also, what is the role of private stakeholders of India? So, when the government of India comes up with any such global collaboration, how do they coordinate with the private stakeholders in the country?
Hmm. Got it. Okay. All right. Does anyone have any other questions before I begin?
No, sir, I think that would be
Okay.
sufficient. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So let's start with it. Let me take you through a quick sort of a 10-minute summary of how healthcare is, organized in India versus, how healthcare is really organized in some of the other parts of the country. In India, it is sort of a very unique model uh, as compared to some of the other countries like, US or, even China for that matter. So let's focus on India for now. So when you're really thinking about healthcare, there are sort of five different systems that you need to think about. So you need to start with the preventive part. So how you generally take precautions, right? You generally take preventions. So again, I'm just going to break it down really easily for you. Is that, let's say if there is a winter that is approaching, you're going to have something which is going to guard you, shield you against the changing weather. So the prevention that you're going to be taking, right? Then you have the primary healthcare, which is really catered to addressing your day-to-day issues, cough, cold, fever, all those type of, basically the clinics which are really there. Then you have the secondary healthcare, which is more about, your day-long surgeries. So let's say, you have uh, a stone in your gallbladder, or, you have some sort of an appendix operation. So the surgeries which basically only take a day. So that is what the secondary care is about. Then the third block, which is there, is the tertiary healthcare, which is going to be a bit more serious. So, your chronic diseases, like let's say if you want to get a heart bypass surgery done, cardiac surgery done. So that is what tertiary care is about. Uh, there is also an evolution that is happening, which is with regard to a quaternary care. So, advanced, let's say, cancer surgeries, advanced, brain or, neurosurgeries. So there is a quaternary care which is emerging. In India, it is still not at a very sort of a big level, but it is still emerging, it's starting to emerge. And then finally, you have something called as a palliative care. So again, very niche sort of concept. Palliative care is really when that patient and this happens a lot in let's say patients who have been on ventilator, or they have a sort of a terminal cancer. So that the patient's lifespan is going to be like 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. So how to really care for that particular patient, right? So these are the different blocks that really emerged, right? And now within the blocks, there is a horizontal sort of a system which really passes all these six blocks. Okay. Now, whenever someone talks about healthcare, next time when you're discussing, think about it in the six blocks that where does this particular sort of function of healthcare really finds itself in. But at the same time, there are three horizontal things which really matches or which is really present in all the six different blocks, which is what we call as the patient, the provider, and the payer. So the patient is the person who is taking the care, provider is the entity which is giving out the care, and payer is the person who is actually paying for that particular care. So let's say in terms of the primary care, so you are going to a normal clinic, you have cough and cold. So of course you are the patient. The provider is generally a one doctor. Okay. Generally people would not go to a hospital. Like you won't go to a Apollo hospital if you have just cough and cold. You will go and find a nearby sort of a mom and pop clinic, right? So in that case, the provider is just a that particular physician, or and typically like an MBBS doctor who is there. And in most of the cases, the payer also is you itself, because it will take like $200, 500,000, not more than that, right? Now, think about this in the same way if you are in the tertiary system, which is basically like a heart cardiac surgery, a bypass surgery, something like that, right? In that case, of course, we know who is the patient. Provider typically are a larger hospitals. So, you would not go to one single clinic for getting a bypass surgery done. You would want to be in an establishment, like an Apollo, Fortis, Medanta, something like that. So in that case, provider becomes a sort of a hospital or entity. The payer, and this is where it starts getting interesting, right? Because this is where the healthcare starts getting complicated. The payer in this case, for a large number of cases, because of bypass surgery, it will cost like 6, 7 lakh, is typically an insurance provider. Now, this insurance provider is typically there for, let's say, 10 to 20% of the cases. Now 10 to 20% of the cases, as in the 10 to 20%, the top echelons of the society. So most of the white collar people, you take your health insurance, or it has been given by your companies, or you have paid for your own health insurance. So in that case, the health insurance company is the one which is really paying for this particular care. Okay. Then there is a large section of the population, okay, 80%, which really does not have access to any health insurance. Now, things really started changing, okay, especially for the secondary care and the tertiary care when the government announced the Ayushman Bharat project. So, what is very interesting is I'm going to give you two data points that will really help you understand. So, the bottom 40% of the society, they used to have a disease rate of 5%, but they used to only access hospitals in 2.5%. Okay. The top 40% of the society, it had a disease rate of around 4%, but they used to access the hospitals by like a 5%. Because generally, typically, what will happen is that in the upper sections of the society, even if you have, let's say, a heart pain, which is prolonged for 2 or 3 days, you will go and get yourself admitted. Okay. While if you look at the bottom 40%, even if they have a very, sort of severe condition, they would not go and admit. The reason behind this is because they did not have access to health insurance. Okay. This are your people like, the laborers, the farmers, in a lot of sections, like a lot of blue collar economic worker too, folks who do not have access to health insurance, either they haven't purchased, or there are they do not have a sort of insurance which has been given by the company. Because of this, every year before 2018, before Ayushman Bharat really started, 6 crore people, and this is something which was very striking, when I came across this statistic. 6 crore people used to fall below poverty line. The reason behind is that there were a lot of people who are just above poverty line in India. Okay, when a cancer is detected in that particular family, a cancer treatment typically will cost you 30, 40 lakhs. So everything in that family is, either sold to get that particular cash flow, or it has been, given as a mortgage, to get that particular loan. Because of this, the entire family, so even if, let's say, the mother, father, wife, husband, brother, sister, whoever it is, gets a cancer or gets a sort of a severe disease which requires a payment of tune of 20 to 30 lakhs, the entire family gets impacted. Considering a family size of 1.2 crore families, because 6 crore citizens, so 1.2 crore families used to get impacted. And when the government, brought in Ayushman Bharat, which covered 55 crore sort of citizens, which roughly translates to around 11 crore families, this particular expenditure, this particular statistics started getting impacted. So in the last, 4 years that Ayushman Bharat has really worked, I'm pretty happy to share that, 4 crore citizens have got this type of treatment. So think about the scale. So 4 crore individuals, which means roughly, somewhere around 80 lakh families, they have been impacted by this. So that itself is a sort of a very, very big sort of a statistics which really emerges out of there. So considering the fact that this bottom 40% of people, it did not have the access to health insurance, there used to be a lot of threat to them going below poverty. So this is with regard to the health insurance part. Now look at the preventive and the primary care part. So one thing that people often get confused is that whether preventive and primary are same. They do have some overlap, but they are not same at all, because primary care you generally access when you're already done, or you're already out with a symptom. Preventive care you generally access when you do not want a symptom to come. So both of them are quite different, right? So even in preventive care, there are so many interesting initiatives that India has done, which other countries are trying to now replicate. Like one of the examples that I can give you, and in terms of preventive care, it will include both the sort of preventions that individual has to be taken, as well as the overall immunization campaign. So technically, the COVID vaccine that all of us took, it was sort of a measure of the preventive campaign. Okay, now if you look at the way the prevention works, there is of course a lot of focus on Ayush. There's a lot of focus on fitness. You see Fit India. You see people pushing for doing exercises, yoga, practicing Ayurveda. A lot of those things, but more largely, what is really interesting is the two different campaigns or two different initiatives that I want to just pinpoint here. One is the Poshan Abhiyan. So all of you should go and read about what Poshan Abhiyan is. In a nutshell, what really happens is that when a woman gets pregnant, the whole journey that happens towards the pregnancy and even after the pregnancy, when the child is delivered, that particular phase of around 24 to 36 months, right from second to third month till the time the child is 2 years, there's a lot of nutrient requirements, both for the mother as well as for the child, in terms of getting the right iron, getting the right minerals, getting the right vitamins. In a lot of our rural areas, because of the lower income levels, they were not able to afford that. Because of that, there used to be direct sort of a impact on the overall mortality levels of the the child mortality levels that we refer to. After Poshan Abhiyan started kicking in, there is there is a sort of a significant improvement that has happened in this. So you should read more about that. The second one, which is also something that is that is quite interesting, is the fact that the whole immunization drive. So every kid, all of us, right from the time we are born till 3 to 4 years, we take different vaccines, right? Hepatitis B vaccine, typhoid vaccine, a lot of vaccines which are out there. So the entire vaccine part, it was very siloed. So one time the doctor will say, "Acha, after 3 weeks you have to come here." Other time it's okay, this is a vaccine, it is not available here. You go to some other hospital. So a lot of random movement used to happen. This entire movement has now been consolidated, and the government runs something called as a Mission Indradhanush, which is like a consolidated, integrated vaccination campaign which tracks the entire history of the vaccination that the child is taking. So again, very interesting part. So this is with regard to the whole preventive part. So you see Fit India, you see Ayush, you see Mission Indradhanush, you see Poshan Abhiyan. Then if I come to the primary care per se, primary care, interesting part is that you already know who is the patient, you already know who is the provider. Mostly it is you, but especially in the rural areas, there were not enough providers, like the doctors itself. Like in urban areas, you still have a lot of clinics. If you go to village, you will generally find that amongst 3 4 villages there is one particular clinic. A lot of times the doctor there, they also do not have the best of the degrees. So the government has now started uh, upgrading the existing primary healthcare center into health and wellness centers. So there are 150,000 health and wellness centers that are starting to get built, which are going to have more sort of equipment with regard to diagnostics, with regard to providing things like basic immunization. At the same time, ensuring that there are enough doctors and nurses. Even with that, we have focused on the infrastructure, but still we need to focus a bit more on the availability of doctor and the availability of nurses. Again, that's a one more issue that we'll probably talk about, which is with regard to the medical education. So this is everything that we are talking about right now is healthcare delivery. Okay, the medical education is a different part. Okay, so this is with regard to the primary part. In the secondary and tertiary, as I said, it is a payer, which is quite an issue. Now let's look at the provider. Okay, do we have enough hospitals? Do we have enough beds? The answer is no, we do not. We do not have the type of beds that, the ratio that WHO recommends with regard to the doctors as well as with regard to the clinics. So every district needs to have one particular district hospital, which can provide secondary and tertiary treatments. Government is working on that. Government is involving actually, and this is where one of the questions that was asked, that how do you really involve the private players? So typically government in this country has really imagined healthcare only as a public delivery instrument, especially for the rural areas. Uh, Now, what I have seen in my learnings, and I have also written extensively when I was studying at IIM Ahmedabad, with regard to how government is great with regards to creating infrastructure. It can create great hospitals, it can create great bridges, it can create great roads, it can create very good digital infrastructure like UPI. But when it comes to providing the end citizen services, the government is not good at that. And this is a function of government. Like, this is across every country. It's not specific to India. It is, whether it's US, India, China, whatever it is great, because when you're creating infrastructure, you know the specifications. The government is great. The government is great in giving specification. I want a road which is this width, this particular material. I want a digital infrastructure. We should do this. But when there is customization which is required, which is your end mile citizen services, like I will give a sort of a simple example. All of you will be using UPI, but you will be using a Google Pay or a Phone Pay or a Paytm. There will be very few of you which will be actually using Beam. The reason behind that is, when you look at the citizen services, you want an experience. So similarly, government is not great in creating experiences. It is great at creating infrastructure. So what I'm seeing is sort of a shift in the last 7 8 years, is the fact that government has started understanding that I should play to my strengths. I should build infrastructure, and then can I try getting some of the private players, who will either help me build the infrastructure for the new hospitals, or the existing hospitals which are out there, which do not have the best administration, which do not have the best doctors, which do not have the best services. Can I ask a private player to come, and he can probably run that particular show? So very similar to what happens in a highway, that a government says that, hey, I want to construct this highway, let's say from Bangalore to Mysore. A private player comes, he makes the entire highway, the government pays him something, and then the rest of the money he collects from the toll. So similarly, the role of the private player in India is going to increase by a huge multiple, in terms of that a private player can now start coming, he can build for an existing infrastructure and be the service provider, which itself is a very interesting model. Some of the countries, they have done it successfully. It is a challenge. There is no particular fixed template. We have been working on this for quite some time, but I think this is going to be very interesting. So secondary and tertiary, the the role is that we talked about the patient. I talked about the payer in terms of the health insurance, Ayushman Bharat, which is out there, and the provider with regard to how the private players can start coming into this particular fold. The final thing that I want to speak before I take a break, and I can open up for questions, is with regard to the palliative care. So the palliative care largely uh, is a sort of a, like, it's still thought as a luxury, that in terms of that, acha, theek hai, this patient is not going to survive. So there are not enough players which are actually focusing on palliative care. the demand is coming a lot from the urban centers. There is very less demand that is coming from rural centers, primarily because they do not have that economical resources to afford the care. But in terms of the palliative care, it is also a very important strand, because there you can actually integrate a lot of mental health. Because think about this: a patient already knows that he has very few months to live. So how to make the most out of that particular time? How to give him that particular comfort? How to ensure that the mental health is getting improved of that particular patient, and he's prepared, the family is prepared. So a lot of some of the government hospitals, they have started building a ward for palliative care, but it is not enough at all. Especially because if you look at the way the disease burden has shaped in India, it is very interesting. And again, any of you who is interested in things like healthcare consulting, you should actually look at it. From 1940s to, let's say, 1990s or late 1990s, most of the deaths in India used to happen because of the communicable diseases like malaria, uh, chikungunya, dengue, all those type of things. From 1990s to now, that burden has started shifting towards NCDs, which means that now you have heart diseases, you have cancers, all those type of non-communicable diseases. The reason for this is that it's very simple, right? Every country experiences this. Even in some of the countries of Africa, because of the lack of sanitation, the lack of proper hygienic facilities, there's a lot of communicable diseases that happen, and communicable diseases are really fast to catch up and result into mortality. But as the country progresses, as people start getting new avenues, as the infrastructure flourishes, we go a similar sort of pattern, to what is also there in US, that most of the deaths are going to come from non-communicable diseases. So in communicable diseases, you do not have palliative care per se, because you get a dengue, you have a very high fever, and if it is a very sort of a life-threatening dengue, then you will pass off in whatever 4 or 5 days. But that does not happen in a heart disease or in a cancer, because you still have like a year or a 2 year. So in that particular cases, palliative care is really important. Now, this entire blocks of different sort of of healthcare: preventive, primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, and palliative. In all this, different blocks which are there, there is also a lot of integration that happens of mental health at every stage. That preventive, in terms of how to really keep your mental health at check. There is a lot of awareness that has happened, and again, there is a very high requirement of providers who can actually cater to that. But at the same time, as there was one particular question that was asked with regard to WHO. So India works with a lot of partners, whether it's WHO, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, all of different partners which are there, which typically provides a lot of technical expertise in strategizing programs. So let's say I want to roll out the Poshan Abhiyan. So, I will talk with some of the experts of WHO, understand what some of the other countries have done, try to understand the best practices, try to understand what are some of the clinical requirements of rolling out this particular program. So that is where a lot of this particular partners come and work with government as technical partners. With World Bank and ADB, we provide technical expertise. I say we because I used to work with ADB. So, we provide technical expertise, but at the same time, both the banks, they also provide some sort of a fund. So there is some sort of a grant, or there is some sort of a debt which is provided to actually implement this program. So the banks will give about 1,000 or 2,000, or even a higher amount loan to the country to actually implement this program. So that is where the role of different partners come out. There are also a lot of big universities like Johns Hopkins, Harvard, that the government collaborate, even a lot of Indian ones, Indian Institute of Health, a lot of interesting organizations. So again, this is just a sort of a snapshot of how healthcare in India is organized. I think I took a bit more time. I think I took like around 20 minutes to put this out. But healthcare in India is very unique, and I hope that this probably gave you a sort of a very broad view of what is happening in the country and where we are heading towards. So yeah, happy to take questions on this or on any particular related theme.
Yeah, you guys can either type in the chat box as well. In the meantime, sir, a few questions had been sent to me, and I would like to ask them first.
Yeah.
What are the better ways of spreading awareness, especially in the rural India? Because there are so many more
Hmm.
challenges regarding the technology,
Hmm.
the poverty. So what could be like the,
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, See, there are traditional ways which are all already there, like your normal radios and your normal newspaper advertisements. You putting awareness material at a primary healthcare center, at a district hospital. All those things are there. But I think one particular segue that is emerging and that is spreading extensively because of the fact that now there are 70% of the country is digitized and having some sort of a smartphone in the family, and we have a huge digital connectivity, is I would love to see some of the interesting rural influencers working on this theme. Like there are so many different sort of government policies. There are influencers who keep doing so many different things, finance influencer, fashion influencers, a lot of things. I would love to see if the country, and especially the rural belt or the semi rural belt, if we can get a huge number of influencers there who are just going to be talk about what are the different policies of healthcare, for which have been launched by the government in healthcare, in agriculture, in infrastructure, in housing. Through interesting sort of videos, through interesting songs. I think that can be a very novel way. The government is trying, but again, as I said, government is great in terms of making infrastructure. If you ask a government person to sit with an influencer and co-think about making a reel, the government is not going to be able to do that. So I think this is something that I would love to see, that how to really harness and leverage the power of social media, and that too very creatively, in ramping up the whole awareness part. Other than that, there are already traditional ways that are put in place.
all right, so I understand. Yeah. Yeah, Jhaveri, and she's asking why India doesn't have enough beds or sufficient oxygen cylinders during COVID, despite of having
Yeah,
sufficient funds. Is it
correct.
because lack of effective infrastructure?
Yeah. So COVID, as such, is a very it was a very black swan event. It was not possible for any country really to be prepared at that particular level, at the way the speed exponentially ramped up. So in the first wave we did fairly okay. In the second wave is when the country really got extremely pressurized. Yeah. So if you look at the COVID scenario, there are a lot of things that happened in parallel, from the government side, and even from a different stakeholders, whether it's NGOs or civil society. So a lot of efforts were put in place. Uh, if we particularly look at the beds part, typically we have, even if you look at right now, the existing bed ratio that we have to patient, that is not enough. Okay. Now there's a bigger sort of a reason for this, is that it's not because government cannot afford putting more beds. The issue that really happens is that we typically do not have that many number of doctors who can cater to that many number of beds. Now again, so I'm going to go back to this. So then the question is that why do we not have that enough number of doctors? We do not have enough number of doctors because we do not have enough number of medical seats. Okay. Why don't we have enough number of medical seats? Because we don't have enough number of medical colleges infrastructure. Okay, so why don't we have that? Because we don't have enough number of teachers. So why don't we have enough number of teachers? Because getting number of teachers is a historical figure. It is not something that I can make someone a medical teacher in a time period of 1 year. It is not something that I can really train them on, let's say, on an academy or in Byju's and give them a 6 month course and they will be ready to become a teacher. It is not how it works, right? So historically, if you look at from 1950s to even 2010s, the way the medical seats they were ramped up, it was done on a very very small pace. So if you do not have enough medical seats, you are not going to get enough medical doctors. If you're not going to get enough medical doctors, you're not even going to get enough medical teachers, because we need to understand that the medical teachers are first, they are the medical doctors. They are not a different sort of a stream of people. So it is the same seat that a doctor is taking that a teacher is also going to take. So the reason for not having beds is also highly correlated with the number of doctors which are there. With regard to the COVID, especially with regard to the oxygen and ventilators and all, again it's a sort of a function, because you need to understand that everything happened within a time frame of 1.5 month. So getting the mask, getting the vaccine, getting the oxygen cylinder. So typically, if I'm running a particular country, I will have a budget of, let's say, having my capacity ramped up by 150%. Okay, I would not budget it more than that. And that is what any particular planner will do, because if I am putting out my money on a particular resource, which is higher, that means I'm reducing it from some other particular resource, and I cannot do that, right? So it was a sort of an outlier event which really happened during the COVID. I think the way healthcare is organized right now, it is a sort of a state subject. Uh, and I think there is a sort of a very high rationale that it should be a shared subject between the national and the state, so that there is more alignment that really happens. I think because that is not really happened, I think we also find a lot of miscoordination, that is especially in times of in times of a crisis like a COVID. So I think that is one particular reason that I feel that we need to get more doctors, we need to get more medical seats. But I am also happy to see that in the last 7 or 8 years, the number of medical seats, let's say if they were 100, within 7 or 8 years, they have now been increased 2x times to 200. So even if you look at the number of aims, right, the number of aims which are around 5 or 6, now there are some 16, 17 aims. So every particular development that happens, it has a functional bearing on the history. But what we do now, we will see the effects of that 15, 20 years down the line. That what India did today, that particular impact will come 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And there is another question from Adli Akrar Khan. There is a long-held cliche that if we invest more in the healthcare in India, as in the budget, the condition of healthcare
Hmm.
services and the ability to tackle the endemic diseases will improve on its own. He asked whether, to what extent is it?
Yeah, no. So healthcare as a percentage of a GDP. So again, as I said, uh, we need to understand that India does around somewhere around 2.5, 2.2 to 2.5% expenditure of the GDP. I hope I'm not wrong with that number, but that it is in the tune of that. We need to understand that this is just the allocation by the center. Then it is also the states which are allocating to the healthcare, because healthcare is a state subject. So center is putting money for the central schemes, which is assisting the states, but then states are also putting out money. So if you look at the whole number, central plus state, it is a much sort of a bigger number. So one is that particular sort of a factor that we need to consider. The second is that, of course, we need to start putting more investment. But one thing that I've been saying for a long time is that it is not only about the quantum of investment, but it is more to do with what is the value that you are actually deriving from an investment. I will give you an example, right? Let's say you have 100 rupees. Okay, 100 rupees that you put on SIP, you will get a 12% return. 100%, 100 rupees that you put on, let's say, a fixed deposit, you will get a, 5.5, 6, whatever, 6.5% return. Okay. So it also depends on how effectively are you using your money. There are a lot of states that are doing well, they are deriving the value of whatever budget that they are putting. There are also a lot of states which are not able to. Like, I will give an example. I used to work and advise government of Karnataka back in 2016-17. So when we were working the National Health Mission budget, the money that was allocated, even that money in terms of the utilization, almost 65 to 70% of funds were not utilized. So it is not only about allocating the money. You can allocate, you can allocate, let's say, lakhs of crores, but it is also about how effectively you utilize, and also how you really put that money and derive value out of it. So I think that is a bigger question. And I think that is a question that not a lot of people are asking, that how to really effectively leverage this money in terms of you know, in terms of getting the max value, because if you look at, let's say, even sectors like infrastructure, I think that is where we have done really well. That if I put 1 rupee of government, I get, 2 to 2.5% returns, but like 2 to 2.5x returns. But at the same time, there is also private sector that is going to put 2 or 3 rupee equivalent to that. So in a way, with 1 rupee of government that I'm putting, I'm getting a total investment of around 3.5 rupee. So I think that is fantastic. That is a sort of a model that needs to be there out in healthcare. That it should not only be thought out as a government investment, the quantum of investment, but how to maximize value and how to really get other private sector people to co-invest in this.
All right.
Yeah.
There's another. At least after COVID, I think we were able to understand our loopholes. So, what are the steps taken afterwards? Now, can we say that India is ready to tackle any stressful situation?
To be
To be
honest, I
honest,
don't
I
think so
don't think so
any
any
country.
country.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
I can
hear the
hear
echo.
the.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't think so any country can really say that we are ready to tackle any particular situation. It really depends on the extent and the severity of the situation. Even a country like, a US, which has such a developed infrastructure in terms of medical resources, doctors, medical infra, completely crumbled. So I don't think so any country can say that, we are ready to tackle anything and everything. But I think, we are much better prepared in terms of our the way everything is getting coordinated, the way all these structures earlier they were seen in silos, that if there is a primary care, then one particular bureaucrat or one particular ministry will be only focusing on that we are only doing this. But now I see the healthcare being seen in sort of a total, that you need to develop every block and there needs to be communication with that. So to give an example, if a primary care patient, if he's not getting well, how he gets referred to a secondary or a tertiary care, and then how his eligibility is checked, and that whether he's a Ayushman Bharat patient or not. Once he if he requires a surgery, then the surgery is done for free. He gets generic medicines to the Jan Aushadhi scheme. So I am really happy with the fact that things are getting integrated. Uh, Things have become much more streamlined. There is a lot of information, communication, awareness that is happening. Like the way India gave 200 crore vaccination shots within 11 or 12 months, I think it's an exemplary case study for every country to really learn that how to really get people to first of all go and take vaccination, how to mobilize the army and train people about how to give vaccination, and how to ensure the entire supply chain, right from the time the research was done, to the clinical trials, to the approvals, to the manufacturing, to the packaging, and to the transportation. The entire supply chain, every stakeholder of that supply chain is trained and is prepared for that. So I think the way India showed that, because there were a lot of sort of a panic that if India has to vaccinate, it will take 10 years, 15 years, some random numbers are being thrown out. But I think the fact that India was able to do that, that itself shows that we have a very sort of a dedicated workforce of ASHA workers, of Anganwadi workers, of nurses, who are ready to go that particular extra mile. So that itself is a sort of a very good sign of a country which is prepared. But at the same time, I don't think so blanket statement can be made that we are ready to tackle everything. Depends on the severity. Yeah.
There is something else. Pandemic created a boom in the mental health issues, and due to the social
Mhm.
cutoff of a large number of people from the society and a reduction in their pay scale. In India, even depression was not recognized as a disease due to it being a non-traditional health condition. So the question is, has the government recognized this new health situation and invested for the same?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
So I
think,
think,
as I
as I
also
also
spoke
spoke
about,
about,
the fact that
that
depression and mental well-being are emerging as one of the big sort of a cause of concern, especially in the urban areas and even the semi-urban areas. I recently saw that government is now setting up. mental health well-being facilities or some sort of an infrastructure in all primary health centers across the country. So, there are going to be, psychologists who are going to be mapped, to every particular primary health center. So anyone, who is going out there, having a problem with the mental health well-being, they can counsel them. But more importantly, the government has also started, and along with that, I know a lot of states have also started a national mental health helpline, which can, where people can call about, they can they can speak about their particular issues, and they can get guidance from different counselors. At the Also at the other thing that is something which is, I think, is important, is the fact that there's a lot of focus which has been given to yoga. So, yoga itself as an instrument helps in a sort of a better mental health well-being. But I still feel that, we have just started scratching the surface. There is a lot more that can be done, and I think it is important that, this type of measures are scaled, and along with that, the states are also empowered, to start working in this particular direction. Also, a lot of startups are coming in this space, so it would be interesting to see how, their offerings can be mainstreamed. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is another question from Srijita Das. Do you believe India is
Mhm.
progressing towards obtaining universal healthcare coverage with its initiative and policies, or do hurdles still exist?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So 50% of the people, which are covered through Ayushman Bharat, they are, they're covered with the secondary and tertiary, and even primary is, free for them in the health and wellness center. So this is a 50% which is there. The top 10 to 15%, they have private health insurance. So the only gap that really exists out is this, 40 to 45%, which exists out in the middle, that we call as a missing middle per se. So the government is actually also planning to ensure 10 to 15 more crore. So the gap that is going to be there is only going to be around 25 to 30 crore citizens, which are right at the middle. Uh, I think we are progressing towards a universal health coverage. And we see UHC as three different pillars: accessibility, affordability, and quality. Accessibility, yes, I think the country has, or the country is doing a, decent job. Affordably, for sure, with, schemes like Ayushman Bharat, Jan Aushadhi, healthcare, health and wellness centers, all these things. And quality is, I think, something, that needs to be focused a bit more on. That, how do you really measure the quality of healthcare delivery? So I think these three stances are something that, the country needs to keep on focusing on. And also, how are we going to ensure the missing middle in terms of the 30 crore population? One way to do that is that there are a lot of associations which are there. Let's say, if you are working in like, let's say if you're working as a street vendor, there is a national street vendor association. If you're working in, XYZ industry, there is a association. So can the government work with different association to launch association wide insurance coverage to cover these people? Because if you can go and, do it at a macro scale, the premium would be much lower for the people or for the association. So I think there are different innovative ideas. Government can also come with a co-payment model wherein, government is paying some premium, and, people or some other entity is paying that particular premium. But I feel that in the next 7 to 8 years, we will see a huge number of population who will actually get access to that type of health insurance cover. And then, I think we would be right at the footstep of, something like a UHC.
Alright, sir, there is another question. Good afternoon, sir.
Hmm.
Shashti this side. It was a great session. My question is, what according to you are the changes to be made in the Indian healthcare system, or changes to be made where it lacks behind? For example, in the field of women's sanitary requirements and the problems that girls and women face, like being anemic, and what's in your opinion that is menstrual leave important rather than upgrading people on it? I think that must be degrading people on it and declaring taboo on this.
In the field of women, I'm just reading it because I lost your voice. Yeah. So I think what I see is the fact that the menstruation as a topic has started becoming a mainstreaming topic, something that people now feel comfortable discussing, and I'm really happy and glad about that. The government has also done a lot in terms of mainstreaming the topic. Every time you go and see a movie, you do get that particular ad on menstruation, wherein Akshay Kumar is coming and talking about that. So in a way sometimes we feel that array, we already know this, right? But when think about the people which are there in the rural and the semi-rural areas, for them, someone who is influential is talking about it, that shows that okay, this is something which is acceptable. The second thing is that the cost of sanitary pad has been put to only rupee 1, which I think gives a infinitely increased access, to buying the sanitary pads. Because on an average, you are then just spending around 4 to 5 rupee per month on sanitary pad, which is, almost even lesser than a cost of a Parle-G biscuit. So with the integration of the whole Swachh Bharat and the whole menstruation part, I do see that things have become much better. Of course, in every particular area there is a scope of improvement. That is how every sector functions. So I do think that there is a scope of improvement here also in terms of the menstrual leave discussion and debate. Uh, I think it is generally like right now it has been taken up by very, very small number of private organizations. Some of the startups are, taking up with that. And I think it also depends a lot on how are you, quantifying menstrual leave? Like, is that a full leave or are you, asking the employees to, let's say work from home? So, some of the organizations are, terming it as a leave. Some of them are terming it as work from home, not coming to office. And some of the organization, like largely majority of the organization does not have it, right? So I think there have been two communications that have been out in the society. Like for a very long time, uh, there was a communication that was done by the sanitary pads industry that menstruation does not stop women, from, or rather, it does not take a physical toll on women. They can, go out and they can do whatever the physical strenuous work. And at the same time, there is also now a big sort of a debate with regard to the menstrual leave that there should be a leave which should be granted. So, there are both the dynamics that are playing out. And I think it would be the imperative of that particular organization that how it is structured, because some of the organization can, do virtual work very effectively. We have seen that during COVID. So I think I would probably just say that once we have started seeing what a majority of the organizations and employees are feeling, then I think we'll start getting a better understanding of how widely it can be mainstream, the leave part per se. But I'm more happy that no longer menstruation is something that is not getting discussed at firms. It is not something that people think it is unhygienic, and I'm really happy to see that particular shift.
Yeah, and there's another query from Sumit Rao regarding healthcare delivery into rural and semi-urban areas. Care at all levels is centered around a key knowledge worker, that is the doctor. As the cost of medical education is increasing exponentially, it is not viable for most new doctors to live and pursue their profession outside tier one cities
Hmm.
if they have any chance of paying back their education loans. Technologies such as telepresence and haptics are immature and or are too expensive to deploy. Is there any light at the end of it?
Hmm. So that's a fantastic question, Sumit. It's a sort of a big burning question amongst medical education community. Uh, for a long time, doctors, medical educators, they have been seen as a profession which has a very high social impact, right? Like you always see doctor is a global profession. So there has been a large sort of a social pressure comes in put into that. How I see this particular problem is the fact that if you are pursuing a medical education, which is typically a 5-year MBBS degree followed by 2 to 3 years of your specialization, probably that system needs to be deployed wherein a newly trained doctor needs to only spend, let's say, very few years, and that is only like, let's say 1.5 to 2 years, because I understand there's a burden of loan and all, and the government can actually work along with banks to put moratorium on the interest on that particular loan. So can we give sort of an interest-free loan, or can we have a 2 years or a 3 years moratorium on the interest that the doctor has to pay? Me is that, if he goes out and if he's gonna be working on a particular stipend, and I think the stipend needs to increase. The stipend right now is very lower. The state government, central, can actually collaborate on how the stipend can be made minimum, let's say 1.5 lakhs, which is a decent amount for the doctors to really start. So even if I'm going out, pursuing my particular endeavors in a rural areas for 2-3 years, I think this is something that can be, that is doable. But there is also a large number of doctors in the community which come typically from a family of medicine, and they are not interested in going out there. But I think some laws, some rules, some legal framework, in consultation with the medical doctors fraternity, can be made around this. But I understand it's a sort of a burning issue, and there is no one single answer to this. Some of the recommendations that I'm thinking about is, they are, of course, I'm just thinking out loud. But I think this is something that the government can work along with the banks, and along with the doctors association. 2 to 3 years of working in the areas, and there are a lot of doctors who actually even stay back because they feel really connected with the community part per se. So if you give them an exposure of 2 to 3 years, then probably, if they want to, they can stay ahead. If they don't, they can, of course, move back to the tier one cities. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. And another question. So, according to the WHO, 1 in 10 person would be having any form of cancer diseases in coming years. So, what would be the strategies to stop or reduce this number of cancer patients?
Yeah, cancer is a big sort of nightmare that the entire world is facing, not only India per se. Of course, in India, every year there are around 1.5 million new cases that are getting detected. So cancer is sort of a big uh, uh, reason for mortality that is going to happen in the next few years itself. Uh, because it is very difficult to understand that, when a cancer is going to get developed, because there are various reasons for that. It is difficult to actually uh, get that type of awareness, or get that type of particular concentrated campaigns like a vaccination or something like that for it. The only way is, giving a lot of education on how to prevent or how to have a healthier lifestyle. So slashing the consumption of tobacco, alcohol, doing fitness exercises, practicing yoga. If there is a particular, let's say, some sort of a lock that is found, going immediately to a primary center. And a lot of this type of screening camps keep happening. So, especially, for oral cancer and the breast cancer, because it is something which is easier to quickly diagnose, because it is also one of the most prominent cancer out there, both the oral and the breast. So, I think the screening part, and then as soon as someone has been detected at a particular stage, immediately referring him to the secondary and tertiary hospitals for either surgery or chemo or radiotherapy, and ensuring that the cancer does not really come back. So having appropriate follow-up. So those type of cancer care loops needs to be taken up, just like what India did for TB, tuberculosis. We did a very concentrated campaign. We need to probably have a more stronger sort of a network. But at the same time, private stakeholders, that partnership with them is going to be critical, because bringing that right technology, bringing that right, educational awareness loops. I think it is difficult only for a single stakeholder. So I think it needs to be something that needs to be done in partnership.
All right. So there is another question which I need to ask you. That when it comes to global collaboration, how do countries settle a balanced ground of rules and regulations unanimously, as all the countries have different codes of conduct and mindsets to follow.
Hmm. So as such, healthcare, well, there are different global collaboration that happens on best practices, exchanging research, you know, doing a trade of medical devices, medical instruments, all those type of things. But every particular country makes its own set of rules in healthcare delivery, quality standards, even medical devices. One aspect that India is working is that till now there are only two sets of regulation that really happens in most of the devices and instruments. One is FDA, which is linked to all the devices that get it, and that is a US based. And second is C, which is a European standard. So India is coming out with own set of standards that any particular medical devices, or any particular, let's say even a medical uh, app, it needs to get that particular clearance. So India is making its own set of standards. Again, trying to uh, map out, how it will map out with the or how it will link with the FDA and CE standards. So there is some sort of a global cooperation there, but typically the global cooperation happens more in terms of the research exchange, best practice, and all. It is not a lot of that we are directly replicating the rules of one particular country, because the way healthcare systems are organized are very different. Like in US, healthcare is extremely expensive. Their pharmacies, if you look at it, there are tablets which cost $400 one shot. In India, that is not there because we still have caps, we have ceilings. If you want to put out a heart stent, the maximum ceiling that you can put is about $1,000. So which leads to affordability issues. Realistically, tablets could cost 6 lakh, 7 lakh, 8 lakh rupee. There's also a lot of artificial demand barriers that are created by the pharmaceutical devices manufacturing companies. So how to keep a check on that, I think that is something which is important. Vendors are doing a very fair job. Breast implant, hip implant, the stents, even the generic medicine part. So that has been good. But I think in terms of the regulations, in terms of having, how easily can a US technology enter India, or how easily can an Indian technology enter a US? I think there is sort of a more global cooperation that is required. And even, we need to exchange the notes with different countries, not only US. There are other countries which have done a good job in their healthcare systems, such as, one example that I gave is Thailand. They have done a decent job. So how to, coordinate more effectively? I think that is something that would be important.
Right, so I would also like to ask one last question: that how can the
Yeah,
youth contribute to it? Like, how can we contribute to this?
yeah. Youth in this country has a very power. Technology. We have access to social media. We have access to education, and we still are not. By far the best time to be a young person in India. So I have largely maintained the stance that happens, what is happening in US, what is happening in Europe, increased instability in China, a lot of inflationary pressure in US. Dollar is on the verge of crumble. Europe, again, the market has built a slowdown. So I think the best time, or rather, India is going to have its best time. And even in India, the best time is going to be for young people. So typically, you are at at a great sort of a hot spot now. When you look at young people and healthcare, there are so many different avenues. Like, it's very difficult to bring around all, but regardless of whichever occupation you go, you can keep contributing to the healthcare. So even, there are direct occupation. I don't know, some of you, will be becoming, let's say, even healthcare. I don't know if, there are people who are in their 11th or 12th grade here. But if there are, they would directly be becoming doctors. But there are also people who would, let's say, becoming consultants, healthcare administrators, hospital administrators, going and joining big pharmacy companies, going and joining big healthcare insurance companies, healthcare insurance startups. So all this is a healthcare insurance, all this is a healthcare ecosystem, and every particular stakeholder, it contributes in a different way, but it has a significant impact on the overall healthcare ecosystem. So as young people, of course, you can go and do a lot of awareness. You can, build a sort of a side NGO which is, promoting and, making people aware about different parts of the healthcare. India has the presidency this year of G20. So one of the theme that we have in Y20 is with regard to the digital health and well-being. So you can contribute to that particular track. You can write on it. You can study more on this. You can give your commentary with regard to, what are some of the interesting areas that are going to come within the country. You can also look at the very, very interesting intersection of technology, healthcare, and policy. That is one particular intersection that I keep looking at. That how is, the new technology impacting. The government has also launched the whole Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, which is just like how we have UPI for fintech. It is going to be a sort of a common public digital infrastructure for healthcare, where you get a unique health ID. There is going to be digitizing of health records. You can easily find the nearest hospitals, doctors, take appointments, schedule. So a lot of, an entire tech ecosystem is coming. And I think for that to really take off, it is the young people who needs to become the advocate. Like even for UPI, the early adopters have been young people. So even for that, the early adopters needs to be young folks. So I think there are a lot of avenues, and because healthcare is one particular sector that directly relates with us in terms of the human, physical and mental well-being, everything that that happens in healthcare indirectly affects us. The medicine became expensive, it is going to affect us. There are more hospitals, it is going to affect us. The insurance providers, they have increased their cover, that is going to impact us. So everything that happens, healthcare is one sector that anything that rather happens is going to affect us directly or indirectly. And it should also be a reverse bridge, that whatever you do, how you can contribute positively to the whole sector of healthcare. So I think that is how I see this. That it's the most it is a sector that is most affected by our actions and vice versa.
So there's another question in the chat box. The Supreme Court has said that denial of emergency medical care was a constitutional violation of right to life. We have seen recent protests of doctors from private sector against a law which mandates free emergency health care because they were wary of the funds. From where will the funds for the same would come? Now, if the government is aware of the fact that 80% of the healthcare sector is held by private entities, how are these policies framed? And how is the right to health perceived by the government?
Denial, see, emergency medical care. I'm just reading the question, which is see, emergency medical care is generally addressed by the trauma department of any particular hospital, right? And it is very different from your normal daycare surgeries or like a bypass surgery that is more planned. Like a bypass is like you will need to come on Thursday, even at this particular hour, and surgery is done. Emergency is like a trauma medical care. The reason for that is that there are so many road accidents that happen. Like even in now, the highest number of deaths that really happen is because of the roadside accidents and all. So I think we really need to build or ramp up capacity in the trauma. There are big hospitals which are out there which already have that type of capacity. I don't think so. There is a big issue with regard to that. I think what really happens is that when a patient is gone, when a patient is given that particular facility in a trauma department of a private hospital, uh, then there needs to be some sort of a arrangement that if a patient is utilizing that particular private facility, who will pay for it. So essentially there are now caps and covers that are put in place that okay, if a patient was gone to a private hospital, the government, the state government per se, will be giving a certain reimbursement to the private hospital, which will include some of the reimbursement, which will also go to the doctor and the attending staff. So at the end of the day, every sector or every particular movement in the sector is related with the incentives. So it's all about creating the right incentive at the right level. It is very easy to fix this particular situation. There are so many hospitals which have that trauma ward which is not getting utilized because there are no particular proper economical incentives. ठीक है? Before taking a patient, the private hospital is confused whether someone will pay or not, so that's why they don't take him. They go to the government hospital, which is already overfilled. So that's why the emergency care is not provided. But if there are right incentives which are put in place, this is an issue that can be easily troubleshooted.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I
I
think
think
we are pretty much over the time.
uh,
So I
so I
think if there is no other question and nothing else, I think we can then wrap it up, Harsh.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, on behalf of the amicus curiae, I would like to express my sincerest thanks to you, sir, and the presence of all the attendees. Now, answer, your insights and expertise were invaluable and greatly appreciated. Your insight on the topic was engaging, informative, and thought-provoking. And I'm sure that everyone present here has learned a great deal from your experiences and the perspective. I particularly appreciate the time you took to answer the questions, and your expertise on the topic was evident in the way you engaged the audience with your compelling analysis and solutions. So, we feel fortunate to have had the opportunity to hear from you on these issues. Once again, thank you for your time, insights, and passion. We are grateful for the opportunity to have had you as our guest speaker, and we hope to have the chance to work with you again in the future. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Such a lovely audience. Thank you.
The participants can now leave the meeting. Yeah, everyone is requested to to leave the meeting. So you can leave now.